My name is Emma Carter. I'm 24 years old, and until that night, I was just a waitress. Invisible, overlooked, disposable. I didn't come from money. I didn't have a last name that opened doors. All I had was a hard-earned work ethic, a quiet smile, and the hope that if I just kept moving forward, maybe one day someone would see me. But that night, the night I worked the birthday party of one of the wealthiest men in America, I realized that sometimes the world notices you not when you scream for attention, but when you stand still and survive the storm. They mocked me. They laughed at me. They humiliated me like I was nothing more than the help, a stain on their perfect evening. And just when I thought I couldn't bear another second of it, he stood up, he silenced the room, and he revealed the truth that shattered everything they thought they knew. That night, the girl they humiliated became the woman they would never forget. The sun was already setting when I pulled into the long, winding driveway, the Carter estate. That's what the invitation had said. To me, it looked less like an estate and more like a kingdom carved into the hillside. Towering iron gates, marble fountains, and a house so massive it could have been mistaken for a museum. I adjusted my black server's uniform in the rearview mirror. Simple, clean, invisible. That's what we were supposed to be. Background noise for the beautiful people as I grabbed my tray and checked in with the event coordinator. I caught glimpses of the guests arriving. Men in tailored suits that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Women in shimmering gowns, dripping with diamonds and entitlement, they floated past me like I didn't exist. Their laughter, sharp, their eyes glancing through me as if I were just another piece of the scenery. Inside, the mansion glittered with chandeliers bigger than my entire apartment. Everything smelled of roses and wealth, the kind of wealth that didn't apologize for itself. Stay out of sight. The head of the catering team barked at us. Smile, nod, and serve, nothing more. I nodded, tucking my hair behind my ear. It wasn't my first high-profile event, but something about this one felt different, more dangerous somehow. As I stepped onto the polished marble floor, balancing a tray of champagne flutes, I caught my reflection in a gilded mirror. A small woman in a starched black uniform, eyes too wide, shoulders too tense. I barely recognized myself. I took a deep breath. It was just one night. Serve the drinks, clear the plates, survive the sneers. I could do that. I had to. I didn't know it yet. But by the time the sun rose again, the girl staring back at me in that mirror would never be the same. The main hall was a masterpiece of excess. Polished oak floors stretched out under towering ceilings, and everywhere I turned, crystal chandeliers scattered light like 1,000 tiny stars. Live music floated through the air, the soft hum of violins, too elegant to cover the sharp edge of laughter coming from the clusters of guests. I weaved between them, my tray steady, my smile locked in place. No one looked at me, not really. They looked through me, past me, the way you glance at a street lamp or a fence post, something that was there but didn't matter. Their conversations buzzed around me. He's investing in a space company now, typical. Did you see her necklace? It's on loan. No way she could afford it. He's only here because he married into the family. It was all politics disguised as parties. Deals hidden behind double-cheeked kisses. Judgment tucked neatly between sips of champagne. At the center of it all, near the grand staircase, stood him, Daniel Carter, the billionaire birthday boy himself. Tall, commanding, with silver streaks in his dark hair, and a smile that could freeze or melt a room with equal ease. Everyone wanted his attention. Everyone wanted to orbit closer to his son. And here I was, careful not to even brush the hem of his tailored jacket as I slipped through the crowd. I heard the first laugh before I felt it. A group of women, standing near the dessert table, eyes trained on me. New help? One of them said, smirking behind her glass. Another woman, dripping in jewels, raised an eyebrow. Probably can't even spell Carter Estate, let alone work here properly. Their laughter was soft, practiced, and cruel. I felt my cheeks flush, but I said nothing. Just smiled the way we were trained to. Polite, distant, forgettable. But deep down, something cracked. something I didn't even know was still fragile. I tightened my grip on the tray, exhaled slowly, and kept moving. Just one night, Emma, just one more night. Or so I thought. I made my way toward the terrace, where the evening breeze carried the scent of fresh lilacs and salt from the distant sea. It should have been beautiful, it should have been peaceful. But everywhere I turned, the glittering crowd turned colder. I stopped by a group of men in sharp suits, offering champagne. One of them, a younger man with slicked back hair and a diamond watch that caught the candlelight, looked me up and down, slowly, deliberately, like I was something beneath him. "Careful," he said loudly to his friends, smirking. "She might spill on your new loafers. You know how clumsy they can be." The group burst into laughter. Not the polite kind, the cruel kind, loud and pointed, meant to humiliate. I forced a smile, the muscles in my face burning. "Would you like a drink, sir?" I asked, my voice steady, even as my heart pounded in my chest. He waved me off like I was a fly buzzing too close. "Just stay out of the photos," another one added. "We're trying to keep the event classy." Their words stung more than I expected. Maybe because I had worked so hard just to be there. Maybe because part of me still believed that if I was polite, enough, professional enough, they would see me as a person. But they didn't. To them, I was a pair of hands, a uniform, a mistake waiting to happen. I stepped back, letting the laughter wash over me like icy water. I had survived worse, at least. That's what I told myself as I moved to the next group. Head held high, my tray trembling only slightly. I didn't know that somewhere across the room, a pair of sharp blue eyes was watching everything unfold, and that this humiliation was only the beginning. The music shifted, softer now, slower, like even the band could feel the change in the air. A ripple went through the crowd, like a silent signal passed from person to person. Heads turned, laughter faded, whispers rose like mist, and then I saw him, Daniel Carter, the man behind the empire, the one whose birthday had drawn this glittering pack of wolves to the feast. He moved through the room with a quiet authority. No need for flashy entrances or booming voices, people parted. For him, without being asked, even the loudest, most arrogant guests dropped their smiles and straightened their ties when he passed. He was older than most of the crowd, but there was nothing frail about him. Every movement was deliberate. Every glance weighed and measured. He wore a simple dark suit, no flashy jewelry, no loud colors, and yet he was the most commanding presence in the room. I stood near the edge of the crowd, my tray heavy in my hands, praying he wouldn't notice me, or, worse, that he would. For a second, his eyes scanned the room and landed on me. Not a glance, not a passing flicker, a direct look. Sharp, measuring. I dropped my gaze immediately, pretending to adjust the glasses on my tray, my heart slamming. Against my ribs, why was he looking at me? What did he see? Just a nervous waitress trying to survive the night? Or something more? I didn't dare wonder. I moved quickly, offering drinks to a group of women nearby, doing anything to disappear back into the crowd. But I felt it, that strange weight of being seen, not like the others saw me, with disdain or amusement, but like I was something unexpected. Daniel Carter smiled politely at his guests, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. But every now and then, when he thought no one noticed, his gaze drifted back to me, watching, waiting, and somewhere deep inside, a part of me I thought had long ago gone silent whispered, "Tonight is not going to end the way you think." The celebration reached its peak. Waiters circled the room with golden trays. The band played louder, and guests, fueled by champagne and ambition, grew bolder in their games. I had just set down an empty tray near the kitchen doors when I heard it. Another round of laughter. But this time, it was louder, crueler, and it was aimed directly at me. I turned just in time to see a woman in a glittering silver dress, tall, sharp-featured, the kind of beauty that felt cold to the touch, saunter toward me with a half-drunk smile. She held her glass high like a scepter. "Darling," she drawled, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "could you do us a favor and not look so desperate?" More laughter erupted around her, men, women. People I had just served moments before. He's chuckling behind manicured hands and cuff-linked wrists. I froze. The tray in my hand felt heavier. The room felt smaller. I wanted to disappear, but she wasn't finished. She took a step closer, her heels clicking sharply against the marble. "You're bringing down the aesthetic, sweetheart," she added with a mock sympathetic pout. "Maybe stick to the kitchen where you belong." I felt my throat tighten. Every instinct screamed at me to say something, to defend myself, to push back. But years of working service jobs had taught me a cruel truth. The customer could humiliate you, and you were expected to smile and thank them for it. So I lowered my head, bit the inside of my cheek, and forced a smile. "I'll stay out of the way, ma'am," I whispered. More laughter. Someone clapped mockingly. Someone else snapped a photo, the silver-dressed. Woman winked at her friends as if she'd just scored a trophy. And from across the room, Daniel Carter watched, still silent, expression unreadable. I couldn't tell if he pitied me, or if he was planning something that would change everything. I kept my head down, weaving carefully through the crowd with another tray of champagne. If I could just make it through this night without drawing more attention, without another insult, maybe I could forget this ever happened. But fate had other plans. As I slipped between two groups near the grand piano, someone stepped back, a tall man, laughing too hard at his own joke, and bumped into me. The tray tilted, the glasses wobbled, and despite every instinct, every desperate attempt to save it, one glass slipped. It tumbled through the air, catching the chandelier light like a falling star, and shattered against the marble floor. A splash of golden champagne splattered onto a woman's pale pink dress. A collective gasp swept through the seat room, as if someone had died. I froze. Panic clawed up my spine. The woman turned, her mouth already twisting in fury. She looked down at the tiny stain on her dress like it was blood, then up at me with the full force of her outrage. "You stupid girl!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the music and chatter like a blade. "Do you know how much this dress costs? It's worth more than your life!" The guests circled like vultures, sensing a fresh kill. Phones appeared, flashing. Laughter, crueler this time, less controlled, rippled through the glittering crowd. I opened my mouth to apologize, but the words, caught, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't fix anything. In their eyes, I had already committed the unforgivable sin of being visible. The woman in pink dabbed at her dress theatrically, as if the stain were growing larger by the second. "I want her. Fired!" she demanded, turning toward the event manager, who hovered nearby, looking pale and anxious. "Right now, get her out!" The world tilted. I gripped the empty tray like a shield, blinking back the heat building behind my eyes. Not here, not in, front of them. Don't let them win. And then, I felt it. That same heavy gaze from across the room. Daniel Carter, still watching, still silent. But there was something new in his eyes now. Something dangerous. Something final. I didn't know it yet, but the balance of the night had just shifted. And soon, the ones laughing would be the ones begging. The event coordinator rushed toward me, her heels clicking furiously against the marble. Her face was tight with panic, torn between appeasing the furious guests and saving her own job. "Give me the tray," she hissed under her breath, snatching it from my hands like I was contagious. "Go to the kitchen now, before you cause any more—" She didn't get to finish her sentence, because at that very moment, a heavy, commanding voice cut through the room like a knife. "Enough!" The music stopped mid-note. Conversations died instantly. Every head snapped toward the sound. Daniel Carter was standing in the center of the hall, his presence towering, his gaze hard and focused. Not on the guests, not on the woman screaming about her ruined dress, but directly, unmistakably, on me. The woman in pink froze mid-sentence, her protests dying on her lips. Even the event manager stepped back as if she'd been physically pushed. Daniel's voice was calm, but it carried the weight of authority so absolute that no one dared breathe wrong. "Is this," he said slowly, dangerously, "how we treat people in my home?" The silence was deafening. Someone coughed nervously. The woman in pink paled, her bravado leaking away like air from a punctured balloon. Daniel took a step forward. "I invited all of you here tonight," he continued, his eyes sweeping the room like a judge passing sentence, "to celebrate life, family, and loyalty." He paused, letting the words sink in, letting the shame bloom quietly across the faces of the crowd. And instead, I find cruelty, pettiness, disrespect to someone under my protection. Under his protection? The words slammed into me, almost knocking the air from my chest. What was happening? Why me? Whispers flared again, frantic, confused, but Daniel silenced them with a single raised hand. He turned his gaze back to me, softer now, almost. "Proud. Miss Carter," he said, and a fresh wave of gasps rippled through the room. "This is your home, too." The woman in pink stumbled back, her hand clutched against her pearls like she might be struck. The entire crowd stared, frozen between disbelief and dawning horror. I stood there, trembling, my mind spinning so fast I could hardly breathe. Had he just called me by his last name? Had he just claimed me? The night wasn't just shifting anymore. It was about to break wide open. The room buzzed with stunned energy, like static before a lightning strike. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the band, halfway through a song, stood frozen with their instruments. In hand, I blinked at Daniel Carter, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear. What was he saying? What did he mean? "This is your home too. How could that possibly be true?" Daniel looked around the room, taking in the faces of his so-called friends and associates, the ones who had just tried to humiliate me for sport. His mouth set into a grim line. His voice, when it came again, was steady, clear, and absolutely devastating. "I suppose now," he said, "is as good a time as any to tell you all the truth." Murmurs swelled into frantic whispers. People leaned in closer, hungry for scandal, desperate for explanation. I felt like the ground beneath me was tilting. I gripped the edge of a nearby table to steady myself, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. He took a slow breath and said it, plainly, like it was the simplest fact in the world. "Emma Carter is my daughter." The words cracked through the air like thunder. I heard gasps, sharp intakes of breath, a champagne flute shattering against the floor somewhere nearby. I froze, every muscle in my body locking tight. No, no, he must be mistaken. That can't be true. That's not possible. My thoughts tumbled over each other, chaotic and impossible. Daniel continued, ignoring the chaos he had unleashed. 24 years ago, he said, his voice dipping softer, sadder. I made a decision I have regretted every single day since. I left behind the woman I loved, and the child I never knew was mine until recently. He turned his full attention to me. No judgment, no anger, only a deep, aching sadness. "I found out the truth 6 months ago," he said quietly. "I've been searching for the right moment to bring you back where you belong." The floor felt like it was falling away beneath me. My knees wobbled. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something, anything, but no words came out. Across the hall, the guests' faces twisted into a tapestry of confusion, jealousy, and dawning horror. The girl they had mocked, the girl they had dismissed as a nobody, was the heir to everything they had clawed to get close to, and none of them could take it back now. The whispers turned into frantic hissing all around me. I caught pieces of it. Sharp, broken shards slicing the air. "His daughter? Impossible! She's just a waitress! She doesn't belong here." The woman in the pink dress, still dabbing furiously at her champagne-stained gown, sputtered, "This is ridiculous! It must be a mistake, a publicity stunt. She's nothing!" Daniel's eyes snapped to her, and the sheer force of his gaze made her shrink back like a scolded child. "There's no mistake," he said coldly. "And after tonight, there will be no place for cruelty in my home, my company, or my life." The golden crowd, Smrsh, the heirs, the socialites, the business sharks, all stood paralyzed. Everything they had schemed for, Everything they thought they were entitled to was slipping through their manicured fingers because of me, the girl they had laughed at, the nobody. I felt dizzy. My palms were sweaty, my throat dry. It was too much, too big, too fast. But then I felt a hand, firm and steady, slip around my shoulder, Daniel's hand. Grounding me, he leaned down and said, "Just for me to hear. You don't have to prove anything to them. Not tonight. Not ever." I looked up at him, into those same blue eyes that now, impossibly, mirrored my own. And something inside me shifted, the fear, the doubt, the old scars of never feeling enough. They didn't vanish, but they cracked. Just a little, enough for something stronger to begin growing in their place, strength, pride, belonging. The guests watched, helpless, as Daniel Carter, the man they had come here to celebrate, to manipulate, publicly chose me over all of them. And as the silence stretched longer, turning heavier, I realized something. They weren't the ones with the power anymore. I was. Daniel gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze, then turned to face the stunned crowd once again. He lifted his glass of champagne, the golden liquid catching the light like a flare against the dark storm brewing in the room. "For 25 years, he began, his voice strong and measured, "I thought I had everything a man could want." He let the words hang in the air, heavy with meaning. And yet, standing here tonight, I realize I was missing the one thing that truly mattered. All eyes were locked on him, some filled with envy, others with growing fear. Nobody dared to interrupt now, not even the woman in pink, who clutched her stained dress as if it could somehow shield her from the truth raining down. Daniel turned slightly, offering me a proud smile, and raised his glass higher. "I present to you," he said, his voice steady as a drumbeat, "Emma Carter, my daughter, my family, and the rightful heir to everything I've built." There was a long, frozen heartbeat where no one moved, no one dared, even breathe. And then, a few polite, mechanical claps, scattered, awkward, hollow, broke the silence. The sycophants clapped because they thought they had to, because they still hoped they could crawl back into favor somehow. But it was too late. The lines had been drawn. The world they thought they owned had shifted under their feet, and no amount of applause could fix it. Daniel turned to me again and whispered, "Would you like to say something?" I looked out at the room, at the fake smiles, the panicked glances, the people who had laughed at me minutes ago. I could feel their eyes digging into me, trying to find cracks, trying to find the girl who would crumble under pressure. But they wouldn't find her tonight, not anymore. I stepped forward slowly, my heels clicking firmly on the marble. I lifted my own glass. My hands were steady, my voice was calm. "To all of you," I said, my voice carrying through the room, sharper than crystal. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are." The smiles faltered. A few claps died midair. I smiled, a real small smile full of strength, and added, "And thank you, Bia, for showing me exactly who I am." Then I tapped my glass gently against my father's, the sound ringing clear and proud in the heavy air. Together we took a sip. Together we closed the door on who I used to be. The girl in the uniform was gone. The heir had arrived, and nothing, nothing, would ever be the same again. After the toast, the atmosphere was changed, not in a celebration, but in a slow, uncomfortable unraveling. The power had shifted, and the people who had once ruled this room with fake smiles and hidden knives now stood awkwardly along the walls, unsure whether to approach or flee. Daniel gave me a knowing nod, then guided me toward the head table. His table. Now, our table. The band hesitantly started playing again, a soft jazz number that no one really listened to. All the energy in the room had been sucked into the space. Around us, I could feel their gazes trailing me with every step, some calculating, some begging, others full of pure hatred. I sat down next to Daniel, my back straight, my chin lifted just enough not to be arrogant, but to finally take up the space that was mine. One of Daniel's closest advisors, a stern man named Mr. Wallace, hurried over with a glass of wine. He placed it in front of me with a deep, respectful bow, almost theatrical in his sudden loyalty. Miss Carter, he said, formally, avoiding eye contact with the others who glared daggers into his back. It's an honor to meet you properly. Properly. Not as a waitress, not as invisible, but as someone who mattered. Thank you, I said, my voice polite but cool. Let them. Wonder if they were already too late to win my favor. Let them sweat. A few brave or desperate guests approached, offering fake congratulations, their smiles stretched tight over clenched teeth. I shook hands when necessary, nodded when expected, but never lost the calm, distant grace Daniel had wrapped around me like armor. Across the room, I saw the woman in the silver dress, the one who had humiliated me earlier, glaring, her fists clenched so tightly her diamond rings cut into her own skin. She was seething, powerless, and she knew it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the outsider looking in. I was at the center. I was the future they hadn't counted on, and they were going to have to live with it. The longer I sat at the head table, the more obvious it became. The real game wasn't over. It was just beginning. I could see it in their eyes. The quick, darting glances between guests, the whispered conversations behind champagne flutes, the fake laughter, a little too loud. The same people who had dismissed me, humiliated me, were already recalculating, reframing their strategies. Because now, I wasn't just a problem, I was the future, and they needed me, a man in an expensive navy suit. Mr. Gallagher, Daniel's old business partners, approached the table with a forced smile plastered across his face. Emma, he said warmly, as if we had known each other for years. I just wanted to personally welcome you to the family. We're all so excited to work. With you? His voice was syrupy sweet, but his eyes, cold, sharp, told the real story. We will try to use you, if you let us. I smiled politely. Thank you, I said smoothly. I'm looking forward to making some changes. Gallagher's smile faltered just slightly at the word changes, but he recovered quickly with a chuckle. Of course! Of course! Fresh ideas, youthful energy. That's exactly what we need. Behind him, a cluster of other family friends hovered, waiting for their turn, waiting to shake my hand, waiting to find cracks they could slip through. Daniel watched them all with a faint smirk on his face, sipping his wine as if he already knew every move they were about to make. He leaned toward me and said quietly, under his breath, They're going to court you harder than they ever courted me. Smile if you must. But never forget who they showed you they were tonight. I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle deep into my bones. I wasn't just Daniel Carter's daughter. I wasn't just the new heir. I was the storm they never saw coming, and they were already scrambling for shelter, one by one. They paraded in front of me, each one more desperate, more obsequious than the last. Some offered advice I hadn't asked for. Some reminisced fake memories with Daniel, as if trying to pull themselves closer to me. Through nostalgia, others, the boldest, hinted at business opportunities they thought I might find interesting. But I saw them clearly now, all of them. And for the first time, I understood. Kindness didn't mean naivety. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. I would smile. I would listen. I would play the game better than any of them, because while they scrambled to hold on to scraps of the past, I was already building something new, something that belonged to me. As the night dragged on, I realized something curious. The richest people in the room were not the most dangerous. It was the desperate ones, the ones who had bet everything on Daniel Carter's favor, who were now the most volatile. Their eyes betrayed them, no matter how, polished their smiles, no matter how careful their words. Their eyes flickered with resentment, panic, and envy. I could see it, a raw, ugly truth they couldn't hide. At the edge of the ballroom, near a towering arrangement of white roses, I caught the gaze of Victoria Langston, Victoria, the woman who had once been rumored to be Daniel's future wife, elegant, ruthless, always perfectly composed. Tonight, however, she wasn't smiling. She was watching me like a wolf sizing up prey, or maybe sizing up a rival she never expected to face. Victoria made her way across the room with slow, deliberate steps, her silk gown whispering over the floor. Each step was a performance. the calculated glide of someone who had spent a lifetime turning presence into power. She stopped a few feet away from me, her perfume, something sharp and expensive, curling in the air between us. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "So," she said, her voice smooth as velvet, "the lost daughter finally returns. What a charming surprise!" Charming, as if I had tripped and fallen into wealth by accident. I met her gaze evenly, refusing to blink first. "It's good to be home," I said simply. Victoria's smile sharpened. "Home can be complicated," she said, her words layered with hidden meaning, especially when people start remembering old alliances, old promises. She was warning me, or threatening me, or maybe both. Before I could respond, Daniel stepped up beside me, his presence a solid wall of calm. Victoria's expression tightened just slightly. Her game face was slipping. Daniel's voice was low, but filled with unmistakable authority. "Emma is not alone, Victoria. She never will be again." The message was clear. Any attack on me was an attack on him, and even the most ambitious vultures knew better than to cross Daniel Carter directly. Victoria's eyes flickered, just for a second, with pure hatred. Then she dipped her head in a mock bow, murmured, "Of course, family first," and glided away like a wounded queen retreating from battle. I watched her disappear into the crowd, my heart pounding, not from fear, but from exhilaration. Because tonight, I didn't just survive, I stood my ground, and, for the first time, they were the ones afraid of me. The night wasn't over yet, but the tides had already turned, and I was ready for whatever was coming next. The clock above the grand fireplace chimed softly, signaling midnight. The billionaire's birthday party, the event meant to showcase alliances and power, had turned into something very different, a battlefield, and somehow, without intending it, I had become the queen on the board. Many guests had already slipped out under the pretense of early meetings, red-eye flights, or sudden illnesses. In truth, they were running from the shame of how they had treated me. Their ambition had blinded them, their cruelty had exposed them, and now they were scattering like leaves before a storm. I remained seated at the head table, my glass of untouched champagne glinting in the low light. Daniel stayed by my side, not hovering, not protecting me like a fragile thing, but standing with me, as an equal, as family. The few guests who remained were the ones who hadn't mocked me, a soft-spoken architect, an old friend of Daniel's from college, the caterer's daughter, who had slipped me a smile when no one was watching, real people, not vultures, not climbers, and somehow, that small group of genuine souls felt more valuable than the entire crowd that had once filled the ballroom. Daniel tapped his glass gently, drawing the remaining guests' attention. Tonight, he said, was supposed to be a celebration of life, of gratitude, of the future. And in a way, it still is. He turned toward me, his eyes warm. "I want to officially introduce you all to Emma Carter. She is not just my daughter. She is my legacy, and she will carry forward the values I lost sight of for too long. Kindness, courage, and loyalty." He raised his glass higher. "To Emma, and to a future built not on greed, but on strength of heart." The few left in the room lifted their glasses. This time, the toast wasn't hollow. It wasn't for show. It mattered. I felt my chest tighten, emotions swelling too big to hold. Not because of the wealth, not because of the title, but because, for the first time, someone was standing in front of the world and claiming me without shame, without hesitation, and I was ready to claim myself too. I lifted my glass, and with a voice steady and sure, said, "Thank you for seeing me, for giving me a chance to show who I am, and who I will become." The glasses clinked softly, a delicate chorus of new beginnings, and just like that, the room, the world, felt different, not because I had changed who I was, but because I had finally stopped hiding it. After the final toast, the remaining guests slowly drifted toward the exits, leaving behind a room that once buzzed with greed and now hummed with something quieter, something real. Daniel stayed by my side until the last goodbye was said. his hand lightly resting on my shoulder, steady and sure, when the last guest disappeared. Beyond the marble arches, a heavy, almost sacred silence settled over the grand hall. It wasn't the awkward silence of earlier. It was a clean, powerful stillness. Seas. The kind that came after a storm had washed everything away. Daniel turned to me, his face open and serious. "I know this isn't the life you planned," he said quietly. "It's bigger, heavier, sometimes uglier than it should be. But it's yours now, Emma, and you can build it into anything you want." His words hit me deeper than any toast, deeper than any contract or title, because he wasn't handing me a throne, he was handing me freedom. I looked around the massive hall, the gold chandeliers, the oil paintings, the towering windows, and realized that while I respected the history built here, I wasn't trapped by it. I wasn't a prisoner in someone else's story. I was the author now, and my first chapter was about to begin. I turned back to Daniel, my heart steady, my voice firm. "I'm not going to pretend I know everything. I'll make mistakes," I said honestly. "But I'll lead with integrity, and I'll honor the people who stand with me, not just the ones who clap the loudest." Daniel smiled. The kind of smile that didn't come easily to men like him, proud, genuine, maybe even a little relieved. "That's all I ever wanted for you," he said, "to be stronger than the world expects and kinder than it deserves." I nodded, feeling something shift inside me, a final breaking away from the girl who had once felt invisible in a room like this. I wasn't invisible anymore, and I wasn't afraid. Together, we left the grand hall, not as billionaire and lost waitress, not as strangers thrown together by chance, but as family, building a future that neither of us could have imagined when the night began. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the stars above felt closer, brighter somehow. A reminder, the sky had always been mine. I just needed to learn how to rise into it. And tonight, finally, I had